Okay, so the plan today is to just go over a kind of review about kind of how I review things when I'm kind of done trading for the day, or you know, sometimes at night, sometimes kind of later. I like to pick, and this is something again you read the Playbook by Mike Bellafiore, which is one of my favorite trading books. He goes over trading the trade, reviewing the trade that made the most sense to you each day. And what that does in your mind, it kind of solidifies, you know, okay, what worked, and push that in your mind so that you can repeat that as much as possible. You know, kind of forget the ones that didn't work and remember the ones that worked really well. Now, for all of you from the room, I'm sorry, but this isn't one that there was any possible way I could have called, but it's still the one that I would like to record. And what I'll do is I'll show you. So these are, bring them over to this screen. These are basically, I just kind of ripped off these PowerPoint slides from online because they're pretty good templates. They've got the S&B kind of logos everywhere, but that's fine. And then I essentially just fill one of these out with annotated charts and thoughts and feelings and how to get better. And then, you know, every week or so I'll go through and I'll review these plays, and I'll look at how to you know, how to make them better. How can I build a scan to find more? How can I use the Trade Ideas odds maker to optimize, or kind of what can be done to make these better, to get bigger in them, and to have more of them, right? So these are one every day, just recording the best play. And again, anyone who's read the book, the Playbook, will know, will have heard about it, right? So it's not a new concept by any means. Also, if you read and listen to or read Psycho-Cybernetics, which is my favorite psychology book of all time, he talks about how essentially how to guide your mind towards whatever you want it to do, right? So for example, if you know you want to become a good batter for baseball, you know, you're not going to focus on the ones that you missed, right? You're going to focus on the ones that you hit, and then you're going to try to, in your mind, visualize that good hit, that home run, and try to kind of program your brain to remember that feeling and remember what you did. So again, you can do it more and you can do it better. All right. So, and here is basically the format. I'll be, again, just copying over all this stuff that I ripped off. Right, it goes through kind of the major things for each trade. So what was the market doing? What are the fundamentals of the stock like, if it's a news play or an earnings play or something to that effect. And sorry, I was just looking at a private message in the room there. Right, what's the strategy description, right? What is it that you're looking for? And then the analysis of the chart. And the trade review. So pretty simple. Again, I like to go through, I do a normal trade review where I go through kind of each trade I made and you know, what is working in this current market environment, which of my scans are producing the best results, that type of thing. But for this trade, and first I'll go over the trade with you guys and to get it good in my mind, and then I'll go over it. We'll build the trade setup. And so basically it was a short that I took on Apple real early in the morning, and again I say real early, which is why you guys will see that I wasn't able to call it for the room. Again, I apologize for that, but Apple popped up on one of my nightly scans as a stock that's made a pretty significant move higher over the last, I think I have it set up for a week or 2 weeks. This scan produces just a bunch of results, and then I just kind of tab through and I eyeball what it is I'm looking for, and I kind of make a list for the next day. So I was watching Apple in the pre-market, and in the pre-market here, it was unable to get above this 32.90 area. You can see the prior day's trading, it made a couple attempts up there when it was unable to get above, and in the pre-market it was unable to get above as well. So I was watching this really early, and my theory was that I was just going to grab a very tiny amount short if it couldn't get above 32.90, and then I was going to cover above $33 if it didn't work like that, or I was going to hold as long as I could, which is embarrassingly not that long. So we'll go to, I don't know how well this will work. On most trading platforms, yeah, this doesn't look very good at all. These dots are supposed to be trades, but it seems to populate a lot of stuff that isn't right. I don't understand how. Essentially what I did is I shorted below this little base on ones, and again my stop would have been above the high of the day at this point, or worst case above $33, and I got out kind of somewhere in this area here. I think I may have gotten out on this spike here. So the trade was pretty simple, but very important, right? I want to keep this in mind because this, to me, seems like something that could be a very powerful setup in the future. Not very volatile, not very news-driven. So what we'll do is we'll just start the process. And again, it's kind of boring and tedious, but you do it every day and you get decently quick at it. And it's a worthwhile tool because basically again what you're doing in your mind is you're reviewing the good reps. You're reviewing the things that worked well for you, right? So again, so we know the SPY this morning was gapping down. And unable to break pre-market highs, right? Just a very simple description of what was going through my head in the morning, right? I'm watching the SPY here, and I'm noting the pre-market highs, and then in the opening trading, we're kind of messing around here, but we were unable to get anywhere close to pre-market highs. So you'll take a screen print of that. You'll save it, and then you'll just open it up again. Insert picture. Right, because you want to see, you want both in words and you want both visually what was happening. So now I can, when I review this trade, I can look and I can say, okay, so this is kind of what the SPY looked like, and with a kind of a high beta stock like Apple, and a market stock, which just means a stock that very, very closely mirrors the market. This is going to be very, very important, and we're going to call this daily roof opening drive. And again, we want Apple, and we want, because you might, the reason I date them too, I think that's very important, because you might need to go back to old setups that worked before and didn't work now. Like in this market, I'm noticing these kind of support resistance plays working much, much better than breakout plays, and I simply think it's because due to lack of volume, lack of volatility. So I'm experimenting a lot more with things like this, where I'm looking at resistance points and bounces off them as opposed to breakthrough. This was not a mental play. All technicals. Right? It's good to note fundamentals if you're trading something that's like a gapper because of earnings or a gapper because of a certain news release, because then maybe if you see that release in the future, it will kind of trigger something in your brain like, oh yeah, last time you know, this company guided up on full year earnings, it popped a crap ton, right? So you kind of just in your mind saying, okay, full year guidance might be a good technical mover, whereas just a quarter, probably not too much. Strategy description, looking for daily long uptrend into right. So again, just a basic description so that if someone were to ask you, right, if someone were to tap me on the shoulder and say, why are you short Apple? I can immediately say, okay, we were up quite a bit into this obvious daily resistance. We're looking for a short off that resistance area. Right? Real simple. So now we're looking at the technical analysis. So I basically break this into two parts. I break it into long-term technicals and short-term technicals.
Click on the playlist cover for some freshly squeezed
right, so let's get this out of the way, and we'll shrink this so it's a little bit more readable.
Featuring artists like Beyonce, Usher, Kid Ink, and more.
Right, so again, we want a print screen, and then we just want to make a quick note, right? So I left the cursor there when I made a print screen. You can also make you know, make it real visual and real personal, right? If you want to draw, you know, a big black thick line, right? You can do that, and you just make a little text box. right? So that's our longer term technical analysis. You know, very simple, right? We want to note, okay, what were we looking at this time, right? Apple made a move from 125 to 133 in a short time, 2 weeks, thereabouts, 2-3 weeks. Apple showed resistance in February and in April, so 133 here and about 133 here. And there it goes, Windows being a jerk. I've activated it multiple times. I don't know what the problem is, but I'm going to call them later today about that. Again, any questions, remember there's a big chat delay, so ask them away. I'm sure there's not. This is pretty basic, and to be honest, this is the unglamorous side of trading. This is the side of trading that a lot of people don't do and they don't want to do. Right? They want to just sit down at their computer and hit buttons and make money. But unfortunately, this is the stuff that separates the good traders from the bad traders. Is this kind of this work, this behind the scenes work. All right, so we want another print screen of this for our short-term technical analysis. Right, we want to put a nice big line in here. We want to say, and this really bugs people for some reason when I call Friday yesterday, but I'm doing it. Alright, and we're just noting that 132.90 to 133 resistance area. We should actually And now to the trade management. So the trade management is different from the technical analysis. Trade management, I basically want to zoom my chart. I wish I could get these dots out of the way. I think when I move the chart like this, it screws them up and makes a lot of dots, but oh well. I really just want to see kind of my entry and my exit. So I exit it on this candle. Right, because you don't want to look back in retrospect and say, you know, oh, well, you know, I should have done this, I should have done that. That's kind of for the next slide. So again, this takes, I don't know, 15-20 minutes max. And then what I do is on the weekends or when I'm, you know, bored or whatever, I'll go through, right? And you saw the other day I was on here and I was building a scan of 2 trades that I wanted to see more of. And I was actually able to make some good money off those scans today. And again, it was because of things like this. It was noting the trades that I really like and that really work for me, and then building a scan to say how can I find more, and then refining ways to trade them. It keeps you fluid, I find, too, right? So maybe, you know, these type of plays work for now, but then maybe I note in the next few months that none of these are making it to my playbook, right? So maybe the market's changed and maybe it doesn't work as much, or So, wicked off 130. The opening min, and then put in so, boom. So Apple wicked off 132.90 in the opening min, and then put in support around 132.65. I shorted under that area with a stop over 132.8. I would continue to look short as long as we were under 133. So basically just saying that if this particular trade failed, I would still in my mind keep an eye and say, all right, I'll short again if we get under that base again. As long as we're under 133, I'm going to keep an eye on short on Apple. Then it may be above 133, maybe then I look for a base there to buy, or an RBI or a GBI, or you know, something that we learn and we do in the room. After Apple made a base around 131.50, I moved my stop above that base and got trailed out on that spike. Picture. Nope. So then the trade review is where you want to pick away at yourself, right? So you've done the work and you've recorded. Okay, this is what I did. This is why I did it. This is how I managed it. You know, and in the trade review, this is where you really want to say, okay, how am I going to make more money off this particular setup, right? What am I going to do to kind of push this setup to the limit, right? So the first part of that for me is always scan refinement. So I'll look at scan for next setup, right? That's always, for me anyway, number one. Look to build/refine, because I already have something. A scan of stocks moving up into resistance / down to support. Look at every night and build list for next day. Right? So that's the first thing. That's how am I going to get more of these trades, because I would love more of these trades, right? Because as you guys see, that's a point, right? I made a point in is it 9:30 to 9:57? I would love more of those. I'd love to be able to do that every morning. You know, get a nice day going by the first half hour. So I want to build and I want to refine my scan. So I'm going to go through my scan tonight. I'm going to see how many results does it give me that's crap, and I'm going to try to figure out, okay, what can I do to make that better? Get bigger with same risk. Now this is something that I'm going to start playing with more and more. Look to short a small position near right? So this is something I want to play with more and more. It's not something I've always traded like I traded this morning, where I waited for this action to happen and I shorted the breakdown here, right? That's how I've kind of always done things. But in my mind I'm thinking, okay, I know 32.90 is a resistance area. So, you know, say you wanted 400 shares of this, right? You could short 100 or 200 shares right at 32.90 and then build the rest of your position as it breaks down, right? Then you get a little tiny lot, about 20 cents above, 25 cents above where the rest of yours goes in, right? In theory, you know, and you would be risking 10 cents on this, right? So in theory, your risk would be reduced and your profit increased. The only problem is you're going to get more stop outs like that, right? Just shorting near resistance. So, but again, in this trade review, you always want to add, okay, how could I make this a little better, you know? And, you know, maybe throughout the next handful of days doing this, I see that quite often I could have shorted near the resistance area. And, you know, made a bit more doing that. So again, that's something I want to kind of check out. I want to start just putting out a feeler lot of even maybe 100 shares to start with in this area, and then adding on the break. So this is how I get bigger with about the same risk, right? Getting bigger, again, if you read the book, and if you haven't, you really should. He talks about getting bigger responsibly, right? It's real easy just to say, oh, I'm going to get bigger. I'm going to take 1,000 shares next time instead of 500 shares. Well, that's not really getting bigger in that particular play. That's just increasing your risk. So then the other thing that I could have done, and you want to look at this, is when we broke, you know, we had this little fart around 32. When we broke down 32, maybe that's a place to add a bit more, right? Maybe I take 100 or 200 short here, I take another 200 short here, and then we kind of fart around here. Maybe I take an additional 200 there with my stop above this base, right? Maybe that's a way to get even bigger while experiencing the same risk. Because again, you guys can, right? That's the trade that I made, but you can see this thing is still at lows, right? So if I was, I don't know, if I had bigger balls, I guess we could say, I would still be in, right? And this was a multi-point move. So maybe for me to stay in, maybe I need to get bigger, and then I need to be able to capture that 400 or 500 share position, just leave a trailer of 1 or 2. So then that's about it, right? So then what we can kind of review what we've done. We've built a pretty basic, pretty simple trade review, right? We came up with a name so that I can easily add setups to it, right? If I trade the same thing tomorrow, I can just put the daily roof opening drive, right? I can just add to it, add to it, add to it, and then maybe when I go back through my list, I see like 10 or 15 of these, and I say, Jesus, this is a really good setup. Time to take more risk, right? Instead of that getting bigger, time to take more risk, right? Maybe instead of risking, 10 or 15% of my daily loss, I risk like 30% of my daily loss or 50% of my daily loss on this particular setup if I notice that it's making great money for me. Right, so we talked about where the market was, we talked about the gap down, and it didn't even try to take out pre-market highs. We talked about that it was not a fundamental trade at all. This was a purely technical setup. The strategy description, we're looking for a long daily uptrend into resistance. We showed a chart of the daily where Apple had made a move over 2 weeks straight up with pretty much no rest into this daily resistance area. We made an intraday chart where we showed yesterday's resistance and the pre-market resistance as kind of the basis for our play. And we talked about the trade management. And then we talked about how to make the trade better by either finding more trades or on how to get bigger with that kind of risk. So that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to kind of bore you guys with today. If you have any questions, just type them in the room and I'll get back to them. Not just about that, about anything, about how you review your setups. I know this isn't the sexiest trading topic, but it is, in my opinion, by far the most important. You will not find a real professional trader out there that does not review their trades and does not know which trades make them the most amount of money, in my opinion. So